Hello and welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Geun-hye. On today's program, South Korean President Park Geun-hye's approval rating has crashed to 5%. Will she be able to stay in office through the term? And Oscar-winning director Lynn debuts his new movie, Lynn's long halftime walk on the Chinese mainland. Are high-frame rate films, together with 3D, going to be transforming the whole movie industry? Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Geun-hye. We start today's show with South Korea's ongoing political scandal. President Park Geun-hye's approval rating have crashed to 5%. Our panel will discuss her uphill battle to stay in office. But first, this background story.
Uncertain future, South Korean police are expecting around 160,000 to 170,000 people to take part in anti-government rallies this weekend, demanding Park Geun-hye resign. Last Saturday, about 200,000 people marched in Seoul to demand the embattled president step down.
Every day, new ads is reported on the news. That's why people are so angry and asking Park Geun-hye to resign. We are deeply hurt, and so we want her to resign.
Young people are running into a brick wall in a society that is full of competition and injustice, no matter how hard they study or work. This time, the scandal has added fuel to the fire. We cannot bear it anymore.
Park addressed the nation on live television on Friday to acknowledge she inappropriately confided in her longtime friend Choi Sun-sil. Choi is currently under investigation for corruption and meddling in state affairs. The police probe spread to include the president earlier this week. Park is the first South Korean president ever to be investigated by state prosecutors. Her opponents are demanding her step down. Efforts to impeach Park will require support from 2/3 of South Korea's parliament. Park's ruling Sanyuli party controls 122 seats in parliament out of 299, or just over 40%. After the scandal broke, President Park former presidential aide to replace the prime minister. When that proposal was firmly rejected by the opposition party, she agreed to let the country's legislature choose her new PM. With her public support at a record low, Park could be the first South Korea president to step down from office before finishing her term.
For more discussion on President Park's political scandal, we are joined in our Beijing studio, Yang Xi-yu, Senior Fellow at the China Institute of International Studies. Sir, it's great to have you back again. And joining us from Washington, D.C., we're having Ms. Lynn, Lecturer of Korea Studies at Johns Hopkins University of Advanced International Studies. Welcome. Also joining us from Washington, we have Professor Bobina Huang, a visiting professor at Georgetown University, also served as Senior Special Advisor to the U.S. State Department earlier. Welcome as well. So, shall I have the two ladies to help us understand, as you are coming originally from the Korean culture, how far is it that President Park's career coming to an end from the presidential office? Professor Huang.
Well, I think it's very, very clear that this is a tremendous crisis in leadership for her. However, I do believe that she will try to stay in office as much as possible. She will not easily give up. That has been one of the hallmarks of her leadership. But she is essentially a lame duck president. There is no doubt.
What do you make of it, Ms. Lynn? At this moment, South Korea seems to need to have a very strong leader, but at this moment, as Professor Huang put it, a lame duck.
Yes, as of now, as Professor Huang already mentioned, as of now, President Park Geun-hye, she doesn't look like she has some willingness to resign as a protest. But the thing is, the things are still very fluid, and I have to emphasize this. I mean, this coming weekend, actually, we expect even bigger, massive protest in the middle of Seoul. So probably this weekend can be a kind of real threshold to change any political situations in Korea. So let's just pay attention to what's going on this weekend.
Besides the degrees of anger and also demonstration on the streets, there are possible impacts on the overall political atmosphere. Professor Huang, at this moment, what political tools, or even tools that she could have, personal tools, she can grab to or reach to, so that could help her to save her political office?
Well, there's several different components, and it's quite important to understand that, first of all, the Korean Peninsula right now is in a very precarious situation in terms of the regional environment, and it has been for the last several years. And in fact, Park Geun-hye's leadership, her popularity, has been strong precisely because she has done well, or at least the public has supported, her strong foreign policies. But domestically, she has not been able to do much of what she promised, which is completely change around the economy, restructure, reform the chaebol. And I think the anger that we're seeing in the public is actually global. We saw it in the United States. There are deep divisions in society, and countries all across the world, whether they're democracies or non-democracies, many people in society feel disenfranchised, very angry and frustrated with their leaders. And but it's actually a very dangerous situation for Korea.
Of course, this is a social division that we are seeing in other countries as well, but this time it's erupted because of an apparent scandal involving the president. So she would necessarily be the one who is going to be blamed, of course. So what do you make of it, Ms. Lim? Does she have much political tools and help at this time?
Unfortunately, again, as the other panelists already pointed out, it looks like the lame duck situations. Of course, there are many different options can be, but still things are fluid. For example, opposition party, they recommended that, probably she can just be playing as a state head, and she can just focus on the diplomatic affairs only, whereas the cabinet members and the prime minister appointed prime minister can be dealing with all these domestic affairs. That can be another kind of alternative scenario. But again, the timing is not that good either, because as we all know, I mean, the next December we have to have the presidential election. It can be probably a little bit earlier, but again, I cannot actually precisely predict what's going on, I mean, in the coming months. But as of now, again, she doesn't look like has many political tools to deal with this turmoil, unfortunately.
Mr. Yang in Beijing, of course, the President Park in South Korea has put forward some of the recommendations on her own for the candidacy of the Prime Minister. She also asked the Congress if they have anyone to suggest. She would also like to hear the suggestions. Of course, she's in a very agreeing mood, understanding her political position right now. So is that likely another person going to help her to stay where she is and eventually, when she's strong again politically, come back again?
Well, from external observer point of view, no qualified or strong enough person who can play a pillar for the current crisis cabinet, for the lame duck cabinet. In my understanding, lame duck not only for the president, but also, I'm afraid, lame duck for the cabinet. And the problem is, South Korea now is facing challenges, both domestically and external. So there's a break of governance, policy making from now to the next presidency. So that produces a lot of uncertainties, not only affecting the South Korea itself, but also affecting this region to some degree.
Yes, indeed. To say the least, she is not, Professor Huang, going to attend the APEC summit, which is an extremely important event. So South Korea, at this moment, particularly with the Korean nuclear crisis, peninsula nuclear crisis, needs to play a strong role in some of the regional discussions. What would be her absence mean for the regional's capability to deal with the situation? The situation, Professor Huang, if I could put just a few words before you answer the question, lay a little bit of groundwork for you. The U.S. presidential election, they have a new president. That president has not been favoring alliance with some of the neighbors in Asia. And also the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue has been always on the verge of exploding once again. Meanwhile, you also see other issues, moving factors in the region. So at this moment, what would that mean?
Yes, I think what we have is almost a situation of a so-called perfect storm, where all of these very difficult uncertainties are all coming together almost at the same time. I think it is a tremendous blow to South Korea to not have Park Geun-hye be able to attend APEC. Not because APEC itself is substantively important, but the symbol of South Korea being a significant global and regional power. Her absence is really a very, very tremendous blow. The problem is that Park Geun-hye faces the same kind of profound difficulties and challenges of governments and societies all around the world, whether democracies or non-democracies. Right. You have societies and people that are very frustrated and angry. They want strong leadership, but at the same time they're very suspicious, and they don't like leaders who take too much, who are too secretive, who are too corrupt, and have too much power. So it's very, very difficult to find any kind of leader to be able to emerge to lead such a country. Even here in the United States, you see the outcome in this election.
Well,
two very unpopular candidates.
Right, but this is a special. This is the time we are facing right now. It's a time of internet. It's a time of WikiLeaks. So this is the time that the politicians have to face. If they're strong enough, if they're clean enough, they will be able to face it. Well, whether they are or not, it is a test time. Ms. Lynn, what do you make of it? I mean, about South Korea's policy capabilities now of dealing with the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue, of dealing with some of the important issues with its neighbor, including with China.
Yeah, actually all these diplomatic affairs, that's the main concern. Of course, as you guys indicated, the absence of President Park Geun-hye at the APEC meeting is definitely frustrating, and not just frustrating, it can have further negative effects on the upcoming diplomatic affairs too. That is again my major concern as well. But even though we do see this kind of power vacuum situation, but hopefully it should be pretty temporary, and we do have other institutionalized mechanisms. For example, ROK-US alliance is not just about the personal friendship between the two top of the states. Rather than that, it has been institutionalized system. So we do have more like manpower networks. It's very dense, very deep, very old, traditionally very robust. So I want to remain as optimistic as I can, thanks to this kind of dense network between the alliances, and even with the China as well. It is not only about the friendship with between the President Xi Jinping and the President Park Geun-hye. It's much more than that. So I want to I want to just remain optimistic as much as possible, because I trust the human networks, dense human networks, and other positive things too.
Mr. Yang, this is not only a friendship between the two presidents, but also some concerns from Chinese side because of South Korea's decision to work with the United States on certain issues. So with a lame duck president, with the concerns still out there, and with the timetable running out of almost any space, what does China make of the current situation? Can China still negotiate and discuss with Seoul about some of the issue of concerns? Can China still bring South Korea, with its capabilities, of course, to work on the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue?
Well, it's a really difficult question to China. Theoretically, now the situation is quite more complicated. The more complicated the situation, the more necessity for cooperation, coordination, cooperation on the complicated issue between China and South Korea. However, as we mentioned earlier, the other side has been a lame duck, something like lame duck. So the effectiveness about the cooperation and the coordination will be certainly reduced. For example, next month there will be another round of China, Japan, ROK state heads meeting in Japan. It's not easy to restore this meeting, and before the scandal, we had a very good expectation about the upcoming trilateral. But now, our expectation dramatically low because of the crisis in South Korea, because of we really frankly speaking, we really doubt the capability of the current President Park and her government, what he can do, what he cannot do. We are not sure. So great uncertainties that affect the effective and the real cooperation and the communication.
This also brings us to the topic that Professor Huang earlier mentioned, that is the quality of the leadership these days. In the time of internet, and of course their authority are being challenged all the time. But the thing is, what would that mean for us when we think about the qualities of leadership for tomorrow, for the future? When we select, when the constituencies go out there and try to choose their leaders, President Park has been claiming herself to be the people's daughter. She served the country. That is the marriage she had. And also, she opened her multi-million-dollar home to the reporters to do and take a look, to show I am frugal, having a frugal lifestyle, I am definitely clean, and I'm with the people. But then one piece of news certainly clashed all of the previous impressions that the public have about her, and probably even more because she claimed to be clean. And that's probably even more damage to her than someone who did not claim to be absolutely clean. So, Professor Huang, what kind of questions does that pose us about leadership and the qualities of leadership, Professor Huang?
Well, first of all, I think, again, in the future, it makes leaders extremely difficult for any leader to be effective, precisely as you say, because of the increasing pressures and transparency. Having said that, I think there is something else that is far more deeper that is behind the South Korean anger. It's not just about Park Geun-hye herself. She clearly has made some poor personal judgments. But I think rather it's a symbol of how South Koreans feel frustrated about deep-seated, profound corruption and lack of transparency in the South Korean system itself, broadly speaking. So socially and also in the business world and in the economy.
What are you talking about specifically?
Well, specifically the connections between, for example, this woman, Che, who is under fire. It seems she is clearly the one that has conducted illegal activities. There is no evidence thus far that President Park herself has actually done anything illegal. Poor judgment, yes, nothing illegal. But the corruption and the connections of this woman, Che, who used her pressure behind the scenes to pressure the major chaebol for donations and to funnel money, I think these are the kinds of practices that South Koreans are very, very deeply unhappy about and represent kind of the old system. And they want this to change. And many South Koreans expected this to change. But as we see, it's very difficult to undo these kinds of systems.
Ms. Lynn, President Park came into office claiming herself to be a conservative. You know, whether it's her dress styles or her interactions, you know, the way she presented herself, in a way resembling her mother. All these is trying to link to her political identity of being a conservative and very strong on foreign policy, going to the traditional way. But eventually this didn't work out. So what would that mean for South Korean politics? Even South Koreans' own international policies for the near future, let's just say for the next year, for the next term of presidency. Is that suggesting a dramatic change of style as a result? Ms. Lynn.
Yes, yeah, we did observe so many those nostalgia phenomena, as you pointed out already. Many Korean peoples missed when the country was glorious, especially under the President Park Geun-hye, Park Geun-hye's father's, that period, that administration, the South Korean country's, that economy was ascendant. So we always missed the time. But the thing is, the flip side of that period is, it was actually the timing of creating all this corruption, because at the time the so-called developmental dictatorship or developmental state patronized the nation champions like conglomerates, which was actually effective, which was very successful when the country was relatively poorer or underdeveloped, or when the country was focusing on the development only. But we all now know that kind of mechanism cannot be sustainable in this 21st century. Now more the global market is much more competitive, and we cannot whatever those direction. I mean, the state cannot dictate the direction. So we totally feel like we have to change. So, but this American election, which was pretty counterintuitive as well. So I don't know how all this global affairs can affect, to the Korean, South Korean domestic situations further. But anyhow, domestically speaking only, I do also hear the Korean people's voice. We have to change this old mechanism. Yes.
Change is being said, anger being expressed, but that is likely really going to solve the problem. That's a big question. Secondly, from here to next year's presidential election, too many uncertainties. Mr. Yang, what can China do from China's perspective in order to limit the possibilities of risks to the extent that China could, in a way, provide and help?
Well, China will be very cautious at this moment, during this period, during the Lynn period, because any kind of coordination, even disputes between China and South Korea will be evolved into the domestic. So China has to be cautious. But on the other hand, China has to continue the cooperation with South Korea on the denuclearization, on the many other regional issues, including the upcoming trilateral China-Japan and South Korea cooperation. In short, less effective but continue.
We'll see what happens. Of course, this is a very important discussion. It's in our neighborhood, isn't it, Mr. Yang? Yang Xi in Beijing, and also Lynn and Bin Huang in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for the three of you for being with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Still to come in our program, Chinese movie fans are lining up to see director Ang Lee's new movie, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. It's high-frame rate cinema together with 3D technology, the biggest thing to come out of Hollywood. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing. The film industry has gone through a lot of reforms recently, and now a new revolution is underway: high frame rate cinema. Oscar-winning director Ang Lee used this high frame rate cameras to shoot his new film, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. It is the first feature film to be shot at 120 frames per second. Insiders say high frame rate technology could be the biggest thing to happen to movies since 3D. I recently caught up with the founder and CEO of Studio 8, Jeff Robinoff, to discuss what it was like to collaborate with Ang Lee on his new film. During our interview, Robinoff discussed how this new technology could change the movie industry and especially the stories in the movie. But first, let's take a look at this background story.
A new film with new technology. Ang Lee's latest film, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, debuts this week in the Chinese mainland. The 3D film was shot at 120 frames per second. It's the first feature film ever to be shot at such a high frame rate, over twice the previous record and 5 times the standard speed of 24 frames per second.
Even if it's a movie, it's almost like you are seeing it with your own eyes, so we feel like engaged in it.
Peter Jackson's 2012 film The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey used to hold the record for high frame rate cinema. It was shot at 48 frames per second. With Billy Flynn, Lee is pushing the film industry into new technological territory. He says the extra clear footage creates a one-of-a-kind movie viewing experience.
I hope everyone will open their hearts to this new experience. Once it's opened, there will be endless possibilities. I hope that in the future we can dream with even better clarity. And that's my dream for the future. Movies are a common dream.
Billy Lynn is a story of courage and breaking boundaries. Lee is encouraging his fans to take in from the film's message and give high frame rate cinema a try.
Well, how much does technology really change, you think, and the way of telling the story?
I think Ang has a very specific point of view on technology. 3D historically was really more for action and for fun and entertainment. And I think Ang's notion, which I think is a really great one, is that the technology can marry the storytelling, and really bring and create a different experience for you. And I think that's what's going on with Billy Lynn.
And also 120 frames per second make a difference because it's supposed to be more exceptionally fluid.
The thing about the high frame rate is really to do with the clarity of the picture, and so you have a very, very clear picture, and you have 3D, which sort of brings you into the experience. So it's really that combination of a high frame rate and 3D that I think gives you the experience of almost being a part of the scene.
Which part of the movie?
Another character. A character within the scene. I think that's what's exciting about it because, so much of a film experience is a passive experience. You're sort of sitting back and watching. And I think with Billy Lynn and where Ang's taking the technology, it's almost like it's happening, around you. It's not just in front of you. So I think you can feel the emotion and participate in the drama in a much different way.
Did you?
I did actually, yeah.
Which scene? Or which scenes?
There's a number of scenes I think that were really effective for me. The first scene I think was really between Vin Diesel and Joe, right? When they're sort of talking about, your time and if it's happened, it had happened already. If the bullet shot, it was already fired. I think that scene was a really powerful scene for me.
Why is that?
I really felt like I was sitting there, as part of the conversation, and so that scene in particular spoke to me, and also the funeral scene too. I had a very big impact on the funeral scene.
They call on name of the same brigade.
Yes.
And only one left.
Yes. And there's no answer.
Response.
Yeah, no response.
3 times.
Yes.
You call on his name.
Yeah, and each time they add a little bit more to his name, his first name, his middle name, his last name.
And you could see the facial expression, even only from the side.
Yeah, you see the muscles, you see the tension. That's the clarity aspect of the high frame rate. And I think it's interesting because for Ang, it's very much been a learning process in making the movie. So when you shoot at a high frame rate and you have that level of clarity, makeup is different, lighting is different, performance is different, the size and scale of the cameras are different. And so it's very much like it's been a learning curve for Ang, and watching him do that and then seeing the end result of it and participating in the experience of watching the movie, it's just been a really phenomenal thing for us.
Are we paying the price in the movie for the technology's sake?
It's a really good question. I think it's a fair question. It's, to me, this is much more in Ang's world of movies, like Ice Storm,
yes.
or Brokeback Mountain.
That's right.
It's very much a drama, and it relies on the interaction of the characters and the emotion in those scenes. And Ang's concept for the film and approach to the movie was to see if the technology couldn't enhance the drama. So there wasn't a lot of scale on the movie. There's very little scale. In fact, even the action sequence where Sergeant Bream is injured, right, where he's hurt, it's frenetic, but it's not big. There's not a lot of scale to it. It's very tight and very close. But what I would say is that he's very, very unpredictable as a director. The types of films that he's done, Crouching Tiger, Brokeback Mountain, Ice Storm, even The Hulk. When his take on the Hulk was also like a very artistic and very sort of technical approach. And then there's Life of Pi, which had big technology, right? But a lot of intimacy, a lot of intimacy, and was small and contained. So I think he's a bit unpredictable in the type of experience. I think what you can expect from Ang is quality, emotion.
Assuming that there could be a second time of filming this, the same thing.
Sure.
Same story. Did you expect anything to be changed? To be improved?
I'm just not a director. I'm not the filmmaker.
I can tell somebody's having a lot of respect for the directors.
I really am. That's sort of been the foundation of my whole career. And so it's really about, I would say, and this is never the case, but if cost were no issue, then it would just be about more time. I think it would be about more days and spending more time and having more flexibility with both the size of the cameras and the amount of movement that you can have with it. You know, so I think it was challenging the number of days for what he wanted for the technology. But again, I think he was very successful with what he accomplished.
It is.
It's also, what's interesting, I think, is that it's a unique experience. You know, it's for me and for most people, it's a first-time experience, right?
Yeah.
So how you absorb that and what your reaction to that is also, you're dealing with something you're seeing for the first time. It's like walking into a house, you know, a new house, new furniture, new everything, and you're walking around and it doesn't feel quite the same as what you're used to, right? And so that part of the experience, I think, is also something that, having worked for over a year now, I have more familiarity. I've seen it in different iterations, and so I've watched like the growth and the progress of it. But for someone who comes in the very first time without the benefit of conversations with Ang or sort of an understanding of what he's trying to accomplish, it's a different experience.
Yeah. Where is it going, you think, Jeff, with the technologies? How much is it going to transform the overall movie industry? You're
reliant on the evolution of that technology, right? The cost of the technology, the availability of the technology. And that just takes time, you know, but whether it's a virtual reality experience or, you know, Ang's version of a high frame rate 3D experience or whatever, Avatar 2 and 3, whatever that experience is, they're relying on both like the distribution technology, you know, do they have the projectors, do they have the screens, do they have the ability to experience what it is that they're creating, you know, and also the technology that's required, the size of the cameras, how much coverage you can get with the cameras, how much movement you have, the cost of the cameras. Like I said, you know, it's a different experience when you're shooting at a high frame rate. You know, makeup is a different approach. It's, you know, and lighting is a different approach. And that's a learning curve, and that I think takes time to sort of figure out how to do it and how to sort of match, you know, the old way of doing it.
Give me an example. Makeup, lighting, acting, directing, any detail during this process that has to be different, and how is it to be different?
You can't use makeup in the same way that you would use makeup because it's much clearer and much more obvious that there's something on your face. So lighting becomes as much an element of makeup as traditional makeup, right? And so you have to learn how to adjust that lighting, what would be, you know, the details of skin, you know, pore details and spots and things that are, you know, what people actually look like that you don't really see, you know, and when they're covered with makeup, right? And so you have to counterbalance the traditional sort of version of how you would light and film someone with the challenges of the technology that he's using.
A dream that inspires others to dream. Ang Lee is the only director in the world to have won 2 Oscars, 2 Golden Bears, and 2 Golden Lions. His films explore relationships and conflicts between tradition and modernity. Ang's ability to capture subtle emotions have earned him international recognition and fame. China's film industry is known for its high profits, but not its high quality. Critics have warned focusing too much on the bottom line can hurt creativity in the long term. Ang Lee is a well-respected role model for Chinese directors. His work is helping inspire filmmakers find better ways to tell stories about China.
Did he complain to you? How come the technology is so complicated? I don't want to do this anymore in the middle of it.
He got really excited by the tech. It was frustrating, I'm sure. And if you talk to him, I'm sure he'll share that with you. But it's also very exciting to be a part of something that's experimental, you know, and to be a part of something that's really, I think, pushing the boundaries of what the film-going experience is.
Was he more like a child, or was he more like someone technician, or more like a movie director during the production of the whole process of producing this movie?
He's almost a Renaissance man in a funny way. You know, he really is. He's both a scientist and an academic, you know, and an artist. And very, I think it's the combination of all those things with Ang that makes him a unique filmmaker.
And you are pushing the boundaries as well, being in your position, because you have to work with a team. You have to deal with all these problems. And they have to meet the deadline. You have to be the one pushing them to meet the deadline.
Well, it's, you know, you don't really have to push Ang. Ang is you don't. He's incredibly driven.
He pushes you all the time.
he's just really responsible. He's a really responsible filmmaker. He, you know, he's very, very professional, and he's incredibly driven. You know, and driven by, I think, the goal of trying to do something unique and trying to do something different.
And of course, Studio 8.
Yes.
The one that you are responsible for now.
Yes.
It's a joint hand between your experiences and many of the talents you could bring from Hollywood with the Chinese capital,
That's
with
right.
Fuxing, for example. Yeah. How did that work? Especially when you approach them with this story, this experiment.
You know, they've been incredibly supportive across the board. You know, I think...
You're not just saying it to be diplomatically correct,
no,
right?
No, not at all. They really have been amazing. I mean, really been amazing. And I have a lot of, you know, daily autonomy. So the decisions that movies are going to make are really my decisions, you know, and they have a lot of faith and trust in my decisions based on the history, you know, my involvement in the entertainment business.
Is it going to be like Chinese capital plus foreign talents, foreign story, foreign content?
For the types of films that we're trying to make are movies that everyone can relate to universally. Right? So it's the same human experience in China as it would be in Italy, or it would be in England, or as it would be in the US. And that's really where we're pushing, you know, our company, Studio 8, and with Fosun support, we're really trying to introduce new filmmakers, you know, who are trying to make different types of movies that have a universal message and a unique visual style.
What are you having in mind for the near future after this?
Our first film after this is called The Salutrian, and it's a brave first film for a young company. It takes place 20,000 years ago. It's not in English. It's in a language very much, you know, a made-up language like Avatar or Middle-earth or something like that. And it's very much a survival story of a 15-year-old boy and a wolf. Wow. And so there's not a lot of dialogue. It's an incredibly unique environment. You haven't seen it before. It's visually stunning. But at the core, it's emotional. It's a survival story between a boy and sort of the domestication of the dog, like the first relationship between man and dog. You know, and I think that's a very sort of universal feeling and a universal theme. And those are the types of films we're trying to make, and I think that's where, you know, you would look at the film, it's not in English, right? It's an emotional experience, and I would say that it's not an American film, it's a universal film. And that's where the lines between, for me anyway, Chinese film and foreign film just disappear. They just
blurred.
Go away. They really do.
Yeah. On the other hand, you do see huge Chinese investment into Hollywood. Fuxing is one. There's another kind of company called Wanda investing billions. Well, they're having their own production facilities here as well. So, as a movie producer yourself, what do you make of this trend?
You know, and here is just like between the sheer number of people, right, and the growth of screens and the growth of the market, I really think that it makes sense to be investing in a company or companies that know how to produce this type of content and know how to produce it at a very high level, you know, and be able to, as the lines, like you say, blur between China and the rest of the world in terms of what audiences like and what they respond to, you might as well be making, you know, projects for the world. And a lot of these companies have big platforms. You know, their digital platforms are global platforms. They have great marketing experience. They have great financial experience. So to me, it's a very sort of natural extension.
That means transformational mindsets for you as well.
It does, for sure.
Is that a big challenge for you?
It hasn't been.
The kind of stories that you need to tell. You know, the global audience who have probably very different taste, and the facilities that could vary from one place to the other.
Yeah, that's been going on for decades, though. You know, the international market has been shifting. Historically, you would respond to that with either visual effects or movie stars, right? So those were the things that transcended markets. And I think now it's becoming, you know, as much about movie stars and visual effects and technology as it still is, and I think will continue to be important. It's really what you'll see as storytelling is going to become much more important than it has been.
It is really about the story.
Yeah, I really think at the end of the day, it's going to be the experience of the characters and how the filmmakers bring that experience to the film. And whether they do it in a very basic way, like Clint Eastwood might direct a film, like very basic, and very much like a visual play, to what Ang's trying to do, which is elevate that play with technology. That's what's going to make it, I think, interesting and exciting, and that's the stuff that we're excited about, like working with those filmmakers.
That's Jeff Robinoff talking to us about his cooperation with the most well-known director from Chinese community, Lee. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of a program, visit our website. Just type in World Insight CCTV News into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. And tune in again tomorrow for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night.